Now, in a speech today to the Catholic Health Association, President Obama basically talks about and thanks a lot of the Health Association's efforts into helping, of course, pass and eventually make sure that the health care law, known as Obamacare, or of course the Affordable Care Act, is a success. Now let's listen to a brief thank you by the President.
I'm here today to say thank you for your tireless efforts to make health reform a reality. Without your commitment to compassionate care, without your moral force, we would not have succeeded. And pursuing health care reform wasn't about making good on a campaign promise for me. It was, remember, in the wake of an economic crisis with a very human toll. And it was integral to restoring the basic promise of America. The notion that in this country, if you work hard and you take responsibility, you can get ahead. You can make it if you try. Everything we've done in these past 6.5 years to rebuild our economy on a new foundation, from rescuing and retooling our industries, to reforming our schools, to rethinking the way we produce and use energy, to reducing our deficits, all of it has been in pursuit of that one goal, creating opportunity for all people. And healthcare reform was a critical part of that effort.
Of course. That's what it is about. That's what it should be about, creating opportunity. I believe in opportunity. I believe everybody has an opportunity. I believe healthcare, just like he does, is a cornerstone of that. You can't exactly create opportunity when you're sick and barely being able to afford medication. Definitely. Or when you can't get to the hospital to diagnose any illnesses that you might have, or if your if your bank account gets utterly destroyed when you get sick, which happens, and which has happened to so many Americans these days. So he's coming out and he's touting his success. Now, there's been success with the Affordable Care Act, definitely. A lot of more people are now insured. It's not a perfect system, but it's better than what we had before. Now, of course, we're going to talk about some criticism, and he addresses criticism. I put together a little bit of a mashup on all the times he addressed some of that criticism. Well, let's take a look at that.
There were those who thought health care reform was too messy and too complicated and too politically risky. I had pollsters showing me stuff, and 85% of folks at any given time had health care, and so they weren't necessarily incentivized to support it. And you could scare the heck out of them about, even if they weren't entirely satisfied with the existing system, that somehow it would be terrible to change it. All kinds of warning signs about how tough this was. Bad politics. And despite the constant doom and gloom predictions, the unending Chicken Little warnings that somehow making health insurance fair and easier to buy would lead to the end of freedom, the end of the American way of life. And while we were told again and again that Obamacare would be a job killer, amazingly enough, some critics still peddle this notion. It turns out in reality, America's experienced 63 straight months of private sector job growth, a streak that started the month we passed the Affordable Care Act. The longest streak of private sector job growth on record that adds up to 12.6 million new jobs. So the critics stubbornly ignore reality. But once you see millions of people having health care, once you see that all the bad things that were predicted didn't happen, you'd think that it'd be time to move on. Let's figure out how to make it better. Why? It seems so cynical to want to take coverage away from millions of people, to take care away from the people who need it the most, to punish millions with higher costs of care, and unravel what's now been woven into the fabric of America. And that kind of cynicism flies in the face of our history.
Okay, so, Republican opposition, of course, to the health care law, which, by the way, was their plan. Was their plan. There comes a time when there's good criticism, there's constructive criticism, and then there's ridiculous criticism. And the president kind of lays it out kind of flatly there. Doom and gloom. Job killer. the end of freedom. This is all stuff. This is all actual criticism that you'd hear from the right wing. And of course, some of that criticism has led to numerous challenges to it. The Republican Party's been trying to repeal the healthcare law probably about 50 times now. Maybe over 50 times now. And the newest Supreme Court challenge, as I said, there's been several Supreme Court challenges over the Affordable Care Act itself. Their own idea, including just, of course, the recent King v. Burwell, which could eliminate subsidies for 6 million people who are receiving them now. So they could lose their subsidies over a typo. That's ridiculous. And it goes to what he was talking about with the cynicism, right, of the system. And it's not just plain old cynicism. It's pure greed. And it's assholishness. And the Republicans out there, they don't care about trying to improve the system. Their replacement was pretty much Obamacare, but with less tax, which means it's not paid for, which means it's going to increase the deficit, which means it's going to be Medicare Part D, which, by the way, is popular. Don't get me wrong, it's popular. It's popular even among Republicans, even though we didn't know how to fund it, and it wasn't funded. It was unfunded Medicare Part D. Well, see, Republican voters and Republican politicians, well, they love giving away stuff. And they charge the Democrats with doing the same. Well, they give away stuff, and it's unfunded. $3 trillion worth of tax cuts during the Bush years. Unfunded. And they just give it away. Medicare Part D, as I said. It's unfunded, give it away. Wars. 2 wars in the Middle East, unfunded. And they're giving away money to defense contractors. That's who got paid during these wars. Halliburton, or known as Z or whatever. This has like so many different name changes because it's had so many different scandals associated with it. But it was Cheney's company. So you want to talk about cynicism. Yeah, President Obama, it was a good speech. Now, I don't agree that the healthcare law is perfect. And even he points that out. Hey, we need to keep working on it. Yes, we do. We need to turn it into a single-payer system. We need to turn it into Medicare for all. That's what we need to do. Now, he didn't come out and say that. And if he was really, I think, and here I'm talking about cynicism, I'm a little cynical. Since we had the option on the table for a single-payer system, and he did not go for it. But you got to think about it, maybe, and if you can, be a little bit optimistic here, perhaps if we were to get a more progressive president and a more progressive Congress, that they would say, okay, we see the problems with the healthcare law, with the Affordable Care Act. Now we know how to fix them, and we can fund that.